Yeah, I'm Dan Belowitz, bringing you another edition of Undoing the Unlife. Today, we are exploring undoing unfocused. Now, have you ever felt like you've got 47 tabs open up on your computer? You've got three different screens. You got your cell phone. You've got kids running around. You've got other things that are just going crazy, right? And it happens so many different times that there's just it's almost impossible to kind of think and actually focus on what it is that you're doing. That's what we're covering today. In we live in this distraction filled world where marketing people or in advertisers are competing for our attention. And I think that's the craziest thing, that we are bombarded with advertising messages, marketing messages, sales messages, um, in around everything with health, wealth, fitness, all of it. Everything is constantly coming at us, and it can seem like information overload. And we'll actually go through ways of dealing with information overload, because I think so many people have so much coming at them that they think that they've got to learn all this new stuff, that AI is taking over the world, that cryptocurrencies or all of this new stuff is coming out, and it just seems to happen faster and faster. We have less time to process, and it can be overwhelming. So let's talk about focus. And a lot of times I use the analogy of different lenses, because everybody can think about when their camera on their phone is out of focus and everything's just kind of blurry. And I use those analogies throughout three different ways. Through like forward-looking future stuff, like looking through a telescope, or the daily stuff like looking in a magnifying glass, and what are your daily tasks, and then finally really analyzing what's going on, getting in the little details. And I talk about that like it's a microscope. But to start out, one of my favorite quotes, and this is from Wayne Dyer. He said, "When I chased after money, I never had enough. When I got my life on purpose and focused on giving of myself and everything that arrived into my life, then I was prosperous." And it was kind of a revelation for me, when you stop chasing something, suddenly it does all of a sudden fall in line and start to follow you. So it's not that we need to chase after money or happiness or success. We just need to advance confidently in the direction of our dreams and goals, and success starts to follow us, prosperity starts to follow us, money starts to chase after us. And it's a different way of thinking about it. So just shifting your focus on what you're looking at and how you're doing it. One of the other authors that I love to talk about is Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, "We become what we think about all day long." This gets crazy because what do we have? Close to 50, 60, 70,000 thoughts every single day. Now, most people's thoughts are the same exact thoughts day in and day out. And especially if you're if you're used to watching the news, you see the news is super repetitive. So are our thoughts. Unless we are thinking on purpose, consciously choosing the thoughts that we're putting out there, then a lot of times we think the same thoughts every single day. And that tends to tell us where we're going to go. If you were to take that as true, we become what we think about all day long. All you need to do is start to jot down, what are you actually thinking about, right? Are you thinking about bills, 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 because they keep coming in? And maybe they keep coming in because you keep thinking about bills, 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 right? Instead of thinking, well, how can I increase my revenue? How can I increase my income? How can I create passive residual income streams that then pay me? Because then you're thinking money, money, money. You're thinking income, income, income. And yeah, everybody sits there and says, oh, the love of money is the root of all evil. Well, but not having it is not doing anybody favors, right? If you were to focus on ways to have it, ways to get it, and actually acted on them and focused on it, then maybe that's what you would have all day. And to that degree, this the same thing, and that's not Emerson wasn't the only person that said that. It was also in the Bible in Proverbs 23:7. As a man thinks in his heart, so does he become. This concept of think and grow rich, he's been around forever. And it's not just the thoughts, right? Because everybody is like, hey, yeah, well, I can just sit there and think and be happy. But it doesn't work like that. It's the actions too that have to go into it. So think through what it is that you're thinking about, because what you resist persists, and that keeps coming back. So if you're sitting there saying that you don't have the money, that you can't lose the weight, that you can't get the spouse or the relationship that you want, that's what ends up keep coming up. And that's why when we start talking about vision, we always think about what is our vision. And people talk about vision boards, and you'll see it also in Wake Up on Purpose. There are a couple of pages for creating a small vision board that you can carry with you wherever you go, when you're there. Now, the reason I did that, and I thought it was funny because I learned this from Wayne Dyer, and was listening to him one day, and he said, "Well, like, how do you think? Like, if I were to say the word garbage can, do you sit there in your mind and spell it out? Do you say, well, there's a G, an A, an R, a B, A, G, E, and then a space and a C, an A, and an N in there? Or do you think of a picture?" Most of us think in terms of pictures. Now, it's kind of cool. When I was starting out in business, we had a sister company for one of the internet marketing companies that we had, and we have motivational in business speakers come in. We would put on a whole production. We do a half-day seminar, and we'd have these guys come in. We had Mike Ditka, Brian Tracy, Jack Canfield was in, had matzo ball soup with Jack Canfield one day. There was another one called Ron White, not the comedian Ron White. Ron White, the memory guy, unbelievable. He's the kind of guy that would walk into a room. We'd have 400 people, and he would shake hands with every single person before the event happens, right? And he would 2-second conversation. Hey, what's your name? And then he would go and do his bit. But he shook hands with 400 people. He'd walk up on stage and he would tell the entire audience to stand up. And it was so cool to watch. I was so mesmerized by this because everybody stands up, and then he would just start saying, "Hey, only sit down if I get your name right." And he would go row by row and just start naming people. And he would go 340, 350, 360 people deep, never miss one. And then you start seeing there's a couple of people that he might get a little bit off. But to remember, you think about this, right? Somebody walks up to you and says, "Hey, my name is this," or whatever. You introduce yourself. Instantly, their name gone, right? You don't even remember it. This guy could remember 400 people's names by their face in an instant, like in 30 minutes to an hour before an event, get up on stage and then name people off. It was unbelievable. And when we started talking through kind of what are the ways to do it, he said it's not about the name itself, but it's how you correlate names to different images. Like he taught us to remember the presidents. And I remember it because where he kind of had you use your mind to start thinking about this stuff. So the correlation of Washington in an apple, and he was like, pick a place in your house and just kind of walk through room by room and put 5 presidents in each room. So I remember looking at my front porch, and there was a chair with Washington, and it was a big apple, and I had to associate the apple with Washington, and then Adams, or maybe it was Adam's apple, but you visually created a memory of somebody to correlate to that name. And that was what he did for 400 people. And it was unbelievable. But he taught me to really start to think visually. Like, how do you correlate this? He actually, for every set of 3-digit numbers, he correlated it to an animal. And that way he could remember up to 1,000 and then just repeat a pattern of animals. So, if 999 was a giraffe, if you wanted a million plus one, it would just be, or 999,000, 999, it would be just two giraffes. Now you got the number. So, in doing that, when we start to think through this stuff, really being able to create and see what it is that you're doing. That's why we spend so much time on creating a crystal clear vision. And not only that, because when you start to work through this stuff, it starts to build, right? It starts to create a burning desire. Right? And another funny one, right? Focusing. You ever gone to a grocery store without a list and you're just like, yeah, I don't even know what we need, but I just know we need stuff. That, that was why they always said, hey, never go to the store stoned, because you end up buying all this junk and it's nothing you need. It's like, chips and snacky stuff and all that kind of stuff. It's so much easier if you go with a list and you can walk through the store and be out of there in no time flat, and you're not buying a whole bunch of crap, right? It's simple things like that. But what ends up happening, instead of having these little hacks like creating a list, like associating visuals to every single name, we get sucked in, and we fall victim to the triple B of distraction, right? The buzzing, the blinking, and the beeping. And that's your cell phone. Your cell phones have taken over so much of our mind share simply because they're constantly calling to our attention. And it was interesting when cell phones were really first started coming out, like after pagers. I remember being one of the first people to have a cell phone, and my friends calling me, and I didn't answer. And they're like, hey, what's the point of having a phone if you're not going to answer it? And I remember always saying, hey, it's my phone. I get to choose when I pick it up or not. That's what voicemail's for. Leave a voicemail. What do you need? What do you want? Like I might be in the middle of doing something and not have time to talk right that second. I don't need to break through break my concentration every time that somebody else wants to call me and have a stupid conversation about, what sports are happening, what's going on in the world. I'll call you back. Right now, I'm focused on this, and it's weird. Like, I've always done that, and everybody's thought I was weird for doing it because, well, the phone rings, you got to pick it up, and I was always of the mindset of, no, it's my phone. I'll decide if I pick it up or not. And then based on who it is, I'll call you back when I choose to call you back. But now it's not just the phone. Now it's text messages. There's the phone calls. There's um, social media constantly pinging you, whether it's TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. All this stuff is vying for our attention, right? And it's buzzing in our pockets. Things are blinking on the screen, and it's constantly making noise. And it's gotten even worse, right? Because now we have watches. Now now we don't even have to go into our pocket. Now it buzzes in our pocket. Our wrists are lighting up, and everybody is so distracted and worried about, hey, what's happening, instead of being focused and intentional about their here and now. And that just becomes shiny object syndrome. And this you'll see throughout business. This you'll see throughout life. There's always that something new that's distracting and pulling you off your game, getting you away from your goals. That's why, as an entrepreneur, as an author, being able to create lists on the daily and then block schedule everything out eliminates the shiny object, right? I've seen it so many different times with lots of different CEOs. Is they'll work on one thing in their business, and all of a sudden they start hearing about something else, and they're like, oh, we should get into that. And it's like, settle down. We get this done right first. Then I don't care. You want to go after that, fine. But until you're earning $1 million in your business, and it's passive, and you've got the system set up to continue to make it, to collect it, to bill on time, to do all of that stuff, then you can worry about shiny objects. But until you have your one revenue system, your one revenue stream in place, focus and finish on one before you start doing another. And it's the same in project management. What we've always found is the more projects that you have going on simultaneously, one, the longer it takes to do them. Two, the more costly it is. Three, you're always switch tasking back and forth rather than just staying focused and finishing on one single project that'll start earning you revenue, get it done, completed, and automated before you start working on your second one. Eliminate those distractions. Focus on what's important to get done. Focus on a few things that'll get you there faster rather than constantly stacking that up. And that was where the One Thing book really came in. Gary Kelleher wrote this, and he had a super simple question. And this is something I love because it becomes super intentional. Every single little thing that you're doing. What's the one thing I can do right now such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? If you were to ask that every single time that you started to get distracted and then actually did it, you have no idea where you might be right now. On every single project, on whether you're writing a book, starting a business, writing a song, it doesn't matter what it is that you do. If you focused on this one question, and it's called the focusing question, right? Because it's what's the one thing I can do right now, such that by doing it, everything else, right, becomes easier or unnecessary. It's the the type of question that's like, hey, what's my future self going to think about this? What's actually going to be beneficial? Do I eat the slice of pizza? Do I eat the chocolate? Because my future self is going to be like, probably shouldn't have done that. Do I save the dollar? Do I invest the dollar? Because future self is going to thank you for that. That's what's so cool about this question. And then Steve Jobs thinking about focus. He took Apple when he went back to it. And I think they had something like 97 different products. And he said, focusing is about saying no, right? Jobs cut 70% of Apple's product line in 1997 and really focused it on the iPod, where the iPad was going to go eventually, the iMac, and I don't know, two other things. Eliminated 70%. And that hyper focus made them one of the most valuable companies in the world. It's through focus that we get good. It's through focus that we cure information overload. I always found it interesting that people say, hey, I'm in information overload. I don't know what to do with all this. I got stuff coming at me from left and right. But and I always ask, so have you ever been in a bookstore? They're like, yeah, I've been in Barnes and Noble and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, well, did you see all the books in there? They're like, yeah, there's tons of books in there. I was like, well, but think about that, right? There's all these books, there's all this information, and it's on all these shelves, and there's titles and all this stuff screaming at you. Did you pass out? And they're like, no, I didn't pass out when I didn't know. I went in there, I looked at a couple of books, and I left. But you had all this information around you. So then what is information overload, right? Other than you not being focused and understanding what it is that you're there. If you're walking in with intent just to browse, suddenly it's not information overload, right? You're only overloaded when you're overstimulated by it. Focus clears that out. Focus is what is really going to bring you into alignment. Focus is going to cure information overload. It's going to destroy the buzzing, the blinking, and the beeping. Focus is what's going to ignite that burning desire for your vision. And that's why you write it every day. And that's why you focus that every single day, writing out your goals, writing down who you are, blocking out your schedule. You focus on your schedule, managing your time, right? There is no such thing as time management. It's you choosing and deciding what you do in every single moment, using the focusing question of the one thing and saying, what's the one thing I can do right now, such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? What if you use that question and then wrote in your schedule every half hour, every 3 hour, whatever it is, whatever block of time you want to do, you answered that question. You said, what's the one thing I can do right now, such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary in alignment with my goals? Can you imagine what that might look like? It's like it's like focusing the sun through a magnifying glass to start a fire. You have to stay in one spot long enough in order for that to ignite, right? Moving it around, it's all over the place. That's where focus is really going to ignite your burning desire. Stay focused. Focused is the key. Focus 90 days at a time in one area of your business, in one area of your life, and see where this goes. I'm Dan Beldowitz, and it's time to wake up on purpose.